Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you. This is KRWG-TV Radio Online, news that matters.
Next on Newsmakers, our Las Cruces High School reporter takes a look at how people along the US-Mexico border are living without access to running water. And an issue very close to home cuts to the Las Cruces public schools. Thanks for joining us on Newsmakers. I'm Simon Thompson. Global warming looms large on the southwest. Rising temperatures threaten to diminish already scarce water supplies. A 2014 UN report suggests that globally, the burden of climate change will most impact the poor, and some of the most marginalized communities in the United States are found along the US-Mexico border. Our Las Cruces High School reporter Daniel Salinas looks at how some people there are already living without access to running water.
90% of New Mexicans get their drinking water from the ground. It is a supply fed by a melting snowpack flowing down mountains and rivers and streams and filtering into the ground. But with rising temperatures, warmer and shorter snow seasons, less of that water is making it into the aquifer. To keep up with plummeting water levels, municipal and private wells are getting drilled deeper and deeper into the earth. This one in Las Cruces, New Mexico, is going down 160 feet. But this kind of water security can come with a $10,000 price tag. For people living in low-income, unincorporated communities nearby along the US-Mexico border known as colonias, it is not a viable option. Many residents depend on shallow wells dug by hand.
People here, they know how to do it, so they do it by hand.
Maria Governali says when she finally struck water 25 feet below her home outside of San Elizario, Texas, she and her family couldn't even drink the water. They still used it to shower and do laundry until they realized it wasn't even good for them.
The clothes was like turning yellow.
And that's a minor problem compared to health concerns. A 2015 University of Texas health impact study reported high concentrations of arsenic and nitrates in many colonias' water supplies. They also found higher than normal rates of waterborne diseases among residents, many reporting cases of diarrhea, dysentery, and skin lesions.
We used to take a shower with that water too, but the skin was with a lot of rashes. I even have, scars from that. That's what a doctor told me. Well, you're gonna have that all your life just because of the water. I said, oh my God.
Treatment and municipal water systems can deal with these impurities. Governali says a lot of residents bought land from developers with assurances it would eventually be piped into nearby water systems.
The developers take advantage of the people. After we start living on the land, we see the problems that we face.
A lot of people living in colonias have to haul in their water through tanks or buy water bottles. And some scientists are concerned climate change will leave more people without access to running water. William Hargrove is director of the Center for Environmental Resource Management at the University of Texas, El Paso.
Well, they're very vulnerable in terms of climate change. During very hot and dry times, maybe the water table drops, it could drop below their intake, and they could be without water for a time period during the hottest time of the summer. People living in colonias and living in rural areas, they're also living kind of in the context of also agriculture, irrigated agriculture. Farmers are also pumping water to apply to their crops, and makes people who have a domestic well vulnerable.
Pecans, alfalfa, and cotton are all thirsty, heavy water use crops grown in Chamberino, a colonia in New Mexico where Patrick Marquez lives with his family. Marquez says his well runs dry for a couple weeks every year while the farmers are pumping water out of the aquifer.
Thank God to my neighbors that, I've been able to run a garden hose to give me water so at least my kids can take a shower and, we can use the facilities.
According to the 2009 Housing Assistance Council Community Report, the Marquez and Governali families are just some of the 1.5 million people living in colonias between Texas and California who depend on vulnerable water supplies.
I'm living here in the United States of America, so I'm supposed to have water.
A few years ago, Governali decided to take matters into her own hands, starting Familias Triunfadoras, a non-profit to effect change and organize residents. and she's had some success getting developers to follow through on agreements to pipe water into colonias. She's also secured housing and urban development grants to build water infrastructure.
And I said, no more. I have to do something for me, for my kids, and for the community.
But running the organization with unpaid volunteers and federal money isn't enough. There's only so much she can do. Marquez says he conserves water where he can, but he says it might be for naught if farmers aren't willing to plant more water-efficient crops. Unlike the large-scale farmers, Marquez says he can't afford to keep digging deeper wells. He says as groundwater levels fall, the burden of rising temperatures will make things worse for residents.
It is falling on the average person because, you know, we're the ones that are going to suffer. More people need to be aware of the water situation. You know, they need to conserve. I'd have to think of the welfare of my children.
And a 2015 NASA climate study projects Southwest water supplies will only be diminished further with an even harsher drought projected in the next 30 years. For KRWG, I'm Daniel Salinas.
Joining me now in studio are Las Cruces High School reporter Daniel Salinas and Las Cruces High School broadcast teacher Elisa Cundiff. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Elisa, could you tell us why you bring media professionals into your classroom?
Well, it started out primarily because I took over the media program and didn't have experience with it, and so I looked and asked for professionals in the community that could come in and kind of support and provide insight. But also because, bringing professionals into the classroom is one of the most powerful things that you can do for young people in terms of exposure to the actual industry. So there's a couple levels to it. One, students who actually meet professionals in the industry are better able to imagine themselves into those positions. And also, it allows our instruction in the classroom to really feedback on what's happening in industry and do backward planning based on what students really need to be learning. So it informs our instruction and provides true mentorship for our students.
And could you kind of describe, that impact that you see that it has on your students in terms of their aspirations and their skills?
Absolutely. So, and Daniel might be able to back me up on this, but when I first came to the program, I would say maybe one student in the program was at all interested in news, right?
Yeah.
And now I think, for the most part, all of our staff gets excited about news stories, is excited about working with KRWG, and does an incredible job. And so just having professionals in the classroom has done a 180 in terms of student interest in telling important stories and doing investigative journalism and understanding what's going on in the world. And I think that in itself has been just life-changing.
It has, it really has. I know that it was pretty interesting having you guys come in because you guys showed us the ropes, you guys taught us how to take a critique, and you've kind of opened the doors for us that if we want to go down the same path as you guys, we have the chance and opportunity because you mentored us and our wonderful teacher here has given us that opportunity to learn a trait that we can use.
So obviously you worked heavily on the colonias piece that we just aired. Could you kind of tell us about the journalistic process of what you went through to get that story? There's a lot of different sources, there's a lot of information, a lot of data.
Well, speaking about going through the journalistic journey of this, it was a very interesting journey because before I didn't know if I wanted to go into becoming a journalist or reporter at all. I wanted to work in film and do creativity and just display a message, but once you guys came in, I kind of learned how to actually do proper research. I learned how to write a script better and to actually educate people rather than give an opinion. So I've sort of developed character from you guys, and going on those long trips and meeting people is really interesting because I didn't know that these problems were in my community or even close to where I was. I thought problems were overseas in different countries. I couldn't do anything to help. But coming in and actually going on those shoots and talking to people was eye-opening because I got to connect with others. I got to tell a story rather than watch a story. So I got to pick up traits on how to do proper research, interviews, how to do stand-up and try and do voicing. But then again, I got to connect with people and develop myself as a person to learn more about these people.
Interesting. Could you kind of speak to what did you learn about these colonias as well? I mean, I came here only recently, and that was a very fascinating, unusual phenomenon to me.
Well, before I journeyed to these colonias, I learned from my mom, whose family did come from Mexico. So I only knew stories about what it was like and how bad it was, like what their homes were like, no water. But actually going to these colonias was a real deal. Like, it was eye-opening. What I once knew as a story came to life, and seeing that these people live off such a poor infrastructure and poor money, I don't know, seeing them struggle but still like keep on upbeat and welcome us into their home was eye-opening, because they didn't have anything to offer us. All they could tell us was a story. So learning firsthand what it's like to be there was interesting, and it was earth-shattering, I would say.
Interesting. And so, Lisa, why is it so important for you to kind of encourage students into journalism, and why have you kind of put so much work into doing that?
I think that it's harder for students to learn journalism than it is for students to learn how to make a music video. And so I think that skill set takes more time to develop. So, a lot of students, when they first go into film, they're interested in making a music video because cutting images to music looks good. Instantly, you get an instant reward. You made something that looks cool. The process of journalism is so much more complicated. Finding an interesting story, being true to it, doing the research, checking your facts, going in and finding people to interview, getting them to actually be there, the lights, the camera, everything. You have to know all the technical stuff, but you also have to know storytelling, and you also have to be aware of your community and society. So there's so many more elements that go into play. And so I think it's a lot more challenging, but in that, not only do they learn a broader skill set, but they learn an important skill set even if they don't go into film. And that is being an invested member of society, understanding how their community works, being invested and interested in the world. And so for me, not only did it challenge students further in terms of developing their skills and becoming better storytellers, but it also kind of encourages them to become more thoughtful, committed citizens, which I think is an important role for all teachers.
And news consumers as well.
Yeah.
So Daniel, you're a senior now, you're ready to graduate. Could you tell us what your plans for your future are in terms of career and interest in media?
Well, making big life-changing decisions is a very tough thing. So I'm still borderline wanting to go into journalism or going into cinematography. But thanks to you guys, I actually can say if I do go into journalism, I have a step up. I know what I'm going to be going into and how to do it. Recently, I got accepted to Columbia Chicago, and it was a great time reading that email, because going to a different city, seeing a bigger city for once, and actually having a news outlet right there is like a gift, because if I graduate, I can intern with them, or if I want to do news stories, I have a bigger audience to reach. I have different news stories rather than talking about small stories here. I can report on bigger things over there. Career-wise, I am still on the fence about what I want to do, but I'm right now heading on the right path.
Great. So, Elisa, Daniel sounds like, from what I've seen at least in your classroom, a kind of a model broadcast student. What kind of challenges are there to kind of get your students, won these opportunities, have them informed about them, and being able to, for them to accept them as well?
And in terms of opportunities, do you mean college application process or doing news stories within the classroom?
College applications and, other things like that, and awards, fellowships.
Okay, so Stephanie, who Daniel works with, got a fellowship through PBS nationally, and she was one of 20 students in the country to get that. She'll be working in DC. It's paid for, fully paid for. She's flown out there, working with professional journalists in DC. Many thanks to you for preparing for her for that. So there are opportunities that different students are able to apply for. Daniel got into Columbia, which is a great journalism school, an incredible film school, and so did Hannah, another one of his co-years. Yes. But they're both incredible filmmakers, and they work really hard, and they spend a lot of time applying. Unfortunately, the reality for a lot of our seniors, my students included, is, they don't get the same kind of grooming and training that kids at prep schools get in terms of the college application process. Okay. They don't have someone whose role it is to help them navigate all of the available colleges and help them think about their application and what they really need to do in terms of writing their essay and getting the appropriate recommendations. And so our students are at a disadvantage in terms of being, are in terms of competing with their peers who have that kind of grooming. You know, our group is strong enough that they've been really working hard to fight their way into the schools they want to be in anyway. So
great. So you know, in terms of these programs, you know, you're doing a lot of good work. You're giving kids some great opportunities and some real world exposure at a pretty young age. You know, there's a lot of cuts going on in terms of education in New Mexico and Las Cruces. Could you kind of speak to how, you know, cuts to this program would impact the opportunities there?
So I think most people are really aware, students included, that our state has been going through a financial crisis for a while, and also that one of the first things to go, and that's been true, you know, in this administration, is education, and we're facing continued cuts. I know that a media program at another high school was cut. My understanding was for financial reasons, and that's been discussed at, you know, all of the schools, depending on how steep the cuts are, which vocational programs, which classes will be cut, and I think that, you know, I think that that's tragic because our young people are our future, and you know, what brings them to school and what gets them excited about a career is what keeps them in school and helps propel them into the future. And so cutting these, I mean, I definitely hope that the media program isn't cut because we need it and it gets students excited about real careers, Daniel included.
Could you kind of speak to maybe people that don't work in education or have never, how that kind of happens, you know, how a student who only cares about one subject, which is a special program, it does keep them in school, it keeps them invested. You've kind of explained this to me personally a few times and it was news to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that surprised me is, you know, our football program at Las Cruces High School is huge. And I have many football students in entry-level classes who are concerned about their grades and do the work specifically because they have to have a certain grade in order to play for the team. And so having that investment, especially when you have a 14-year-old boy who doesn't quite get the picture of college yet, to have something that engages them every day, that makes them feel a part of a team, that actually keeps them coming to school and keeps them engaged to care about their classes and care about that information up until the point, I guess, they have their brain development to understand and be a little bit more forward thinking and understand the value of those classes. So having these programs that make students feel like they're part of a community and that they're passionate about definitely keeps them invested in their other classes. I don't know if I've seen that even in our own program this last semester.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Then can I ask you, you know, you're in the school, you're basically, you know, you're the person who's being educated, one of the people. Could you kind of speak to the cuts you've seen and what you've seen, you know, lost, the challenges that makes and the kind of disadvantage maybe that maybe people are experiencing or students are experiencing because of the cuts? Like what have you seen go?
Well, for starters, the budget cuts are astounding. They're really a kicker because you would think that the first thing they'd want to say would be education, because New Mexico is one of the worst states for education for young adults. And to see that that's the first thing going is really disheartening to know, because if they're not going to worry about bettering our future, then what's the point in staying here? That's why more than enough young adults leave the state and it just falls to shambles because no one's giving that opportunity to the younger people, because the first thing that they're going to cut is the programs that we love. And so if there's nothing that we care about, what's the point in continuing on? Yes, it's okay, it's great to get general education like math, English, and that is what everyone needs. But if you don't have something like a goal to work for or a dream to chase after, then what's the point? You can't just carry yourself if you don't have a dream to go after. And it's interesting to see that so many teachers come into our school and they leave after a year because they were laid off due to budget cuts, when it should be that we welcome people in and we want to educate more people and we want to get people to working and push the money back into the system rather than dispel it and let it get sent somewhere else.
Interesting. And what about in terms of the cuts you've actually seen? You know, I came into your classroom pretty recently and there was no paper for printing out slips. I mean, tell me about all of that.
I know that right now teachers aren't allowed to make copies of papers, so it's pretty interesting because instead of having class sets, they make us take down by note, like we have to write everything by hand. And so it's interesting to see that. Also, I think equipment-wise, for different clubs and organizations, that's not being roped in anymore. A lot of people are having to fundraise. Teachers have to sort of make more money on the side by selling school-approved snacks or by getting second jobs.
Sorry, school-approved snacks. What were you?
Teachers can talk to our administration if they want to sell like apples or like waters, and
To the students?
To the students, yes. It's for students, and it's a good money maker, and students really do need it because it helps out if they need like a snack or a pick-me-up during the day, but they have to get that cleared. As for other things being cut in our school, I know that there's construction going on at our school, so just recently we got the green light to continue on building our school, but for like a whole semester or two, we were just sitting there looking at construction equipment being non-used because we didn't have the money to push back in. So that's all I've really witnessed out of our school.
Interesting. So turning to a more positive aspect of what you guys are doing, all the stuff you do is positive, but an aspect of education in New Mexico. Tell me about the Student Television Network and the competition you guys recently competed in. Maybe Daniel, I'll start with you.
Okay, STN, what can I not say about it? It's a great opportunity for student journalism and broadcast kids because
what is it?
It is a nationwide competition, and every broadcast or school that has a broadcast group takes their students to a designated city, and for a whole week we spend in convention. We do like convention styles. We have competitions. We have
Workshops.
Workshops, yes, and we have speakers that enlighten us on the positive sides of being in journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically for a whole week, we get to meet up with peers that are like-minded like us, and we develop connections that are nationwide. And I still talk to friends that I've met last year, so you build friendships off of this one connection. And it's basically doing what you love, but in a fun, creative atmosphere.
It's something that students really work towards. When I took over the program, I didn't know what they were talking about when they kept saying the acronym STN. Do you remember? I was like, why don't we just do this competition instead? But it's like Daniel referred to, it's a way for them to see excited peers from all over the country. There's about 3,000 students who are excited about the same things that they are. It's highly energizing, but the jewel competition that we get excited about is called Crazy Eights, and it's where the students have to produce an 8-minute news package in 8 hours. And
Wow.
so they wake up at 7 in the morning, we get the theme. It's amazing to watch because as a teacher, you're actually not allowed to do anything. So you watch them pitch stories to each other, run out, they get in like a fleet of Ubers, go all over the city. You can't like set up shots for them, you can't suggest locations for them. So they go and they script and they anchor and they come back. They hunt down people. Last year he followed a homeless person, then convinced the soup kitchen to let him film in the soup kitchen. Then he got into the mayor's office and got an interview with someone in the mayor's office, all within a 2-hour period.
Wow.
Because then he had to Uber back, and edit it all together. And then they edit all of the pieces together along with anchors and graphics. And then they have to export it and have it completely exported.
Tell us
and dropped
how
in
you
a
went
box.
this year.
So this year.
This year, I'm pretty proud of my staff. I mean, I love them. They're a great group of young adults, and we thought we had it in the bag. We kind of got a little overconfident because we had started producing, we got on a roll, we were working together as a team, it was cohesive, everything was working together. But, things just didn't go as we planned, and we ran into some issues that we didn't see coming. And unfortunately, we missed deadline by about 2 minutes, which was devastating. It was heart-shattering.
Just to clarify, you missed deadline and then you're disqualified, basically.
We were disqualified. We missed deadline. We had to suffer through seeing all these other teams celebrate and cheer. And right then in that moment, it was very frustrating having to deal with that. But afterwards, a couple of days later, we knew that we had produced something that we could be proud of. So the feelings of depression
and Centennial High School just down the road actually won the whole national competition.
Which is incredible.
Yes,
Maybe we should
kudos
be
to them.
interviewing them. I don't know.
You should. You should see that. Actually, I'm a big fan of. Is it Caitlin O'Brien's piece? There is a piece, and their piece that won is awesome. But there is a piece in there that I am a fangirl of and you should interview Caitlin O'Brien because she's a bomb. She's the bomb.
Well, thank you, Daniel Salinas, Star Reporter. We really appreciate your work. And Elisa, thank you for coming on the show and the work you do. Another student we work with recently completed a story on an issue very close to home. Cuts to the Las Cruces public schools. Lorena Ortiz reports.
Each year, millions of people struggle financially, and that is exactly what is happening here at Las Cruces High School. Because of the issues our state is having regarding money, it is taking a toll on all schools in New Mexico, including ours. The budget cut will not only affect students, but our staff as well. Mr. Marks, an English teacher here at Las Cruces High School, explains how it's going to affect our incoming school year.
The state has different investments that they invest in to fund education. A lot of that surplus is gone, so they're going out and having all the districts do budget cuts to where we don't have the money that we had anticipated, so we're going to have to make a lot of budget cuts for next year. At Las Cruces High, one of the things we're trying to do right now is to make more electives and more choices that will help prepare them for the future. But then we're being told that we're not going to be able to offer some of those. It's going to be a problem for the kids.
In order for the state of New Mexico to manage the economic crisis, it has to cut down on 2.5% of the education budget, which is the equivalent to $61 million. Mr. Robles elaborates on the situation and how we will be able to carry on.
So they've let every school know that there is an X amount of money that they have to cut. We have been put on a freeze, so we can't buy anything for the most part. So we have to make do with what we have for the remaining time until next year's budget comes out. You do the best that you can with what you have, and we have the best students in the world here, so I know that we will find a way to persevere.
And although we may be going through this taxing time, we must remember to stand together. If you have any concerns or want to make a change, please go to nmlegis.gov. Reporting for Bodog Broadcast, I'm Lorena Ortiz.
That's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's morning edition, 5 to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now, noon to 2. And for all things considered, 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd like to hear from you. Email us with story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.